Hey everyone, welcome back to Be Not Afraid. Today is episode 6 of Dismantling Ethnic Studies, the model curriculum out of California. The reason that we're doing this is because that model policy term means that once it hits California, the goal is for it to hit nationally every single school, K through 12, ethnic studies. Now, most people think that ethnic studies is as simple as learning about different people's cultures. And we get a lot of feedback on that of just, why do you not want to hear about diversity? Why do you not want to learn about what other people have experienced? And what we're trying to do is prove with our own words over and over again that that is not the goal of ethnic studies, that ethnic studies is actually couched in that, but underneath it, it's activism. So I have a few friends with me, my friend Brooke, my friend Lynn, my friend Tammy, who is a guest today, and she is a teacher from California, and me. So welcome, and let's get started. Tammy, will you just talk to us a little bit about what you experienced in California so far?
Yes, my name is Tammy McMahon-Gorans. I taught from 1986 to 2021 in a little town called Lemoore, California. And in 2021, Achieve the Core, which is a website we've always been referred to go to for Common Core type supports, had a class called Unpacking Racism in Mathematics. So I zoomed in with them on that class and I took notes. And then I awakened to the woke, and I have not looked back. I studied what critical race theory is by reading the book by Delgado, right? And took an online class. I started educating other people about what critical race theory really is. I joined California for Equal Rights. Just real quick, there was a conference a year ago where we were talking about ethnic studies. And also there was a man that was part of that lawsuit that just went through at the Supreme Court. He was a part of the lawsuit. He was Asian and could not get into Harvard because his scores were too high. So it was a very, very precious time. But I learned that ethnic studies in 2019, it was so bad that even Gavin Newsom, who is questionable the decisions he's made, he said, this is vile. I'm not approving it. It is so bad. It was full of anti-Semitic type things. So they did a couple edits and then he signed off on it. But I want you to know that what many districts are doing is they're taking that liberated ethnic studies or getting the books that went along with it, and they're sneaking it into the school districts. And so they are doing that first edit that even Gavin rejected. They are adopting it. So it is very concerning. So thank you for letting me share.
Oh, absolutely. So the first thing is you said this is elementary school, correct?
I taught elementary school.
So this the math curriculum that you were looking for, that was racism in math.
Yes.
What did that look like?
Well, I took the class and I took copious notes. And they also made it very clear at the beginning that if you, we have some boundaries here. And I knew, like, if I disagreed, I'd get kicked out. So I just listened. And but they said that if there was a child in your class and that they were failing, it was because of racism. And so if a black or brown child was failing, and I was just so shocked because for 35 years I've lived in Wonderland, like where we took all our kiddos. If someone didn't have food, we took groceries. I would go and conference at an apartment building. If someone wouldn't come to me, I'd go to them. And so I just was so dumbstruck, because if there were, say, 20 students that we would test and 5 didn't get it, we always said, what can we do to bring them up? We never separated them by their race. Fresno Unified right now has a program for reading that is only for Black people, a summer school that's only for Black kids. And so they're segregating and they're proud of it. And so I just see so many things that are concerning.
Have you seen any of the books that they have in that program? I'm just wondering if the books lean towards activism, because we know that that tends to be where things go. The goal is that double helix of not just centering around the marginalized, but making sure that the marginalized are aware in every situation of their level of oppression.
Well, Cal Studies, there's a Cal Studies program that we did in 4th grade last year and the year before. And that's where Bill Gates was featured as an entrepreneur. And we were studying the gold rush, but then LGBTQ popped up. And what was very interesting is my students who were in 4th grade, the LGBTQ flag popped up, and Harvey Milk, who was inappropriate with a 13-year-old. So I don't quite get that. And and my students listened to the out of the mouth of babes. My kids said, Mrs. Gorans, this is not appropriate. We're studying the gold rush. So even children know what's appropriate and not appropriate, but they're sneaking it in. It's all this online stuff.
And I feel like that's a perfect place to move into our discussion of the curriculum, just so that you can kind of get a view that this is what's already happening in California. Now it's about to become mandated in every school. So Brooke, will you open up our pages?
Oh, you need to let me.
Of course.
Okay. This is page, I have a little different view because I thought, oh, maybe it will help to color it, but if not, I could go back to the other view.
No, I think it's much better.
Okay. So this is page 19. Did you want to start on 7?
Yes.
I just highlighted stuff that stuck out to me. Feel free to highlight. I can highlight yours as well later, but.
So, Lynn, did you have any thoughts on this first one on 7?
No, no, my issues were more with 8.
Okay. Brooke, do you have anything before I start?
No, I actually love this. Like, I grew up in California as well, and there was our 6th grade teacher. He was born in a Japanese internment camp, and he taught us all about the 6th grade. In the 6th grade, all about the internment camps. And actually, where we lived was in the orchards owned by Mr. Ito, who we'd go and meet like every Saturday and play toys with his grandkids. And so it was very much a part of our community where we were. And he taught it so well that we didn't feel like we were terrible people, even though he had been born and my neighbor had been born in it. So but we knew all about it. We knew, so there is a way to teach this hard history where you don't teach victim oppressed. And he was one who had been deeply affected by this. And so kudos to him for teaching it in the right way. And I thought everybody learned about internment camps, but I'm so happy he brought it into because it was his own community thing that he brought it and taught it to us. So I really recommend own communities. And to do it in a way that he did it. So there's nothing against doing this. There's just the way of teaching where you feel shame for who you are and when you had no part in it. And the act itself, without saying victim oppressed, you feel deep sympathy as a people, and it doesn't need to be heightened. You know, most people can see the damage that's done. So, and then I really love student-based inquiry into the local community. I think this is awesome. You get a chance to talk to people and see the variations in voice, and this can be done well. So those are my only comments.
Yeah, I was similar this is why I decided to call it the good, the bad, and the toxic, because when I first saw 7, I thought, oh, wow, they're going to go in the right direction, maybe. And we'll find out that that's not necessarily what happens. But in this first part, I completely agree that my appreciation for people, for me, it came from living in so many different homes and every single different home, not just every racial category, but every single home and family had their own culture. And so gaining an appreciation of that, I think is a healthy way to learn. I think that if we went back into yesterday's, which I'm not suggesting that we do, but if we went back into yesterday's, can remember that they said, however, only as time permits should we listen to every different voice. A lot of the times they want to focus on people that are sharing their narrative. But I will say that if 7 was the way all ethnic studies was, I would be all about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 8.
The only thing that this particular page 19 has had, like both of you have mentioned before, has some really good ideas if they were adhered to as they seem to be stating. On 8, I have a problem with some of the language that is being used, and once again, I go back to what I spoke about before, and that is the use of certain words like systems of power. It brings you back to that segregation of thought instead of oneness again, equipped to analyze and critique contemporary issues and systems of power. And down on very bottom, I have that circled. Once again, it should help them communicate and interact with empathy, appreciation, empowerment, and clarity, to interact with curiosity, to listen empathetically without judgment, and to critically consider new ideas and perspectives, which in and of itself is pure of thought until they start to go back into the language that they keep bringing up. Because again, ethnic studies is a wonderful concept. I taught it. And so, but I taught it in a purer form than a segregated form, where the kids were very comfortable. And you heard me speak about that previously. So that's all I have to say about what's left on 19. Is it seems to be walking back to the same idea at the very end.
The discussion must be appropriate to the age and maturity level. One of the issues that I have with that is that we're told very often about the myth of innocence, that children can see anything or anything's appropriate to them because of what they've already seen online. So I would be concerned about what they believe is age appropriate for the kids. At first glance, again, I see this and I don't have any concerns with this page.
Yeah, I don't either. I highlighted good things that I like. The systemic racism that we already pointed out, and intergroup and intragroup bridges. And I'm just a little bit curious about that, but I think we're, like I said before, we're more powerful at the individual level, and we tend to stereotype and use generalizations more as we focus on groups against groups.
And fostering self-understanding is finding your points of intersectionality.
Right.
So
here. Yeah.
So that's that point where they say, oh, well, you don't really know your level of oppression, even if you're very self-aware. If you don't fall in line as a minority with what they're saying, then you really haven't mastered self-understanding.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
You know how they say, oh, we don't teach critical race theory. Critical race theory is but in ethnic studies isn't systemic races. That's critical race theory, right? Everything is racist,
Mhm.
right?
They
Okay.
actually say that. We covered this in another one, but they
Yeah.
actually say that ethnic studies, when guided by CRT, is taking it in the right direction. They openly say that. And when I say they, I'm once again talking of Christine Sleater, one of the main adopters of the curriculum.
Another thing I was thinking as I was going through watching all your episodes that you've done thus far, I was thinking, this depends on who's teaching it.
Yes.
There's a lot of teachers that want to get out. They're like, get me out of education. And but the ones that the like old school, I mean, I'm going to teach this, but then you've got new young kids that are coming in through college. That there's this young gal that the librarian, a student called her a racist, and she got very upset. So she went to this young teacher that the little child was from, first grader was from her class. And she said, you know, your little Johnny called me a racist. And she goes, well, you're white, and walked away. So
Yeah.
it depends on who's teaching this.
Yep.
Ah,
You know,
Yeah.
and that brings us down to the very last bullet point. I underlined that because that's exactly right. At the very end of this, fair, balanced, humanizing academic presentation, various points of view, consistent and accepted standard of professional responsibility rather than advocacy, personal opinion, bias, or partisanship. And I know as an instructor that once a teacher goes into that classroom, unless you have cameras on that teacher, they are going to push for whatever view they hold as being sacred to them. And
Well,
so
go
a
ahead.
good teacher won't though. I remember teaching, I was a Spanish teacher, and I would teach about Las Posadas and how their Christmas tradition. And they would ask me questions, what I thought about it, and I wouldn't answer. And so I'm not saying I'm a good teacher, but but I was super careful not to give my opinion and to say this is what happens at Christmas, and this is, you know, and not
Right.
to advocate for anything. So I think that teachers can easily insert it or not. And I think we need to get back to the place where they don't, and they just,
Right.
and
There's also a lot of hyperbole that comes in. So when they say fair, balanced, and humanizing, you have to understand that if you stand on the wrong side of this, on the wrong side of the so-called ideology, you aren't human anyways. Your viewpoints are not human. So you will be called names. You will be completely just dehumanized and erased. So when they say fair and balanced, a good teacher genuinely means fair and balanced, but an ideologically captured teacher means fair and balanced within the viewpoint that they're even willing to consider.
yes, yes. And the teachers that are coming up right now have not been taught the history and the values of freedom and liberty that we have. I mentioned this once before, but now they are being groomed for other ideologies that they're bringing in fresh and new into the schools, into classrooms, to our children. And that's not to say that they mean to. It's just to say that this is what so many of them are being taught.
That's the thing, is that we cannot lose our compassion for the teachers that have been taught this and have been taught that this is the way to be a quote unquote change maker, because they're only doing what they've been taught to do.
My
So-
neighbor, I was at a neighborhood party, and she's a professor that teaches math to future teachers at a Mennonite Christian college. And I told her I was getting out of education in 2021 because of the unpacking racism in mathematics, and she's the professor that's preparing these teachers at a Christian college. She said, what's wrong with that? So she was all for white privilege, white supremacy bad, and she's teaching future teachers in a Christian college. So it's here.
Yeah,
There's
I always try to
evidence.
look at it as they know not what they do, because they genuinely don't. We're
She
not
means
just-
well.
That's the whole thing. Yeah. So we move on to the next part.
Yeah, can I say something just as a question on this? This was, I came across this the other day where I saw language that was being used and misspelled, breaking away from the traditional spelling to kind of go along with, how shall I say this? Being from LA, it's really hard for me to say this correctly. But it's totally contrary to what we've been. All of a sudden, we're getting a whole new vocabulary that we are supposed to go by now.
Well,
Just
not
to
only
give a few.
that, it says what appears to be a gendered stem. And
Yeah.
that in itself, it's not even accurate. It's like, oh, this person thinks it, so let's address it, you know?
Yes,
Instead
yes.
of going back to etymological roots of the word, which means something different, they're like, well, somebody thinks it, so therefore it's true, so therefore we need to change it. It's so not based in reality that it's like crazy making.
Right.
And anyway, so
Well, and then on top of that is the fact that a lot of people do not appreciate it. I remember when they changed black to BLAQ, and it was shocking because the people less likely, the least likely to be okay with the queer agenda being taught to their kids, like it or not, this is just fact. The people least likely tend to be the historical Black Christian community, would be the least likely okay with this. And then all of a sudden you're adding the Q instead of BLACK, BLAQ, saying that we're one and the same. That our struggle, quote unquote, their struggle is one and the same. And I'm just going to be really blunt here. I cannot pretend that I'm a different color. I could not pass. There's no situation in which I could pass. So just on that level, a person who is homosexual, if they had to, in the worst case scenario, they could pass. They could pass. If it was like, you know, walking through a line of soldiers or something, a person who is queer could pretend they weren't. Everywhere I go, my face goes with me. That's a fact. And it's not, I'm not ashamed of that, and I'm not bragging about that. It's just an honest fact that we should be okay with facing. Just like we should face that you're completely hijacking another person's culture. You are completely colonizing another person's culture when you say my ideas must be your ideas to fit my agenda. Okay, I'm off that pedestal now.
No, that's great. That was great. That was great.
yeah,
So
I mean, it really bothers me that they're going to depart from reality into feelings, and feelings determine reality, such that they'll change words. And I just looked up the definition of the origin of the word history, and histor is Greek, and it means learned, wise. Historia, inquiry, narrative, account, has nothing to do with gender. And so this is anti-wisdom to do such a thing. And so they're just going to make stuff up. Like if they're going to say, hey, we're going to, if you want to put some fake words in, we're with you, you know, just all done that. So.
well,
And
and that goes back. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
Well, principle number 4 of critical race theory is knowledge is socially constructed, you know, so that's where we're getting
Okay.
like, oh, if I feel it and I said it, it's fact.
Yeah.
Knowledge is socially constructed. Listen to that and then wonder why in the world you have your kids in a public school that doesn't even believe in the idea of traditional knowledge
Or truth.
or
And
truth.
yeah, and the fact that they're saying this respelling is to challenge oppression. Even words that have nothing to do with it is oppressive. They are grasping at straws to identify oppression and make people mad, even in the use of the words that they choose. It's intentional. You are oppressed, you are oppressed, you're an oppressor. It's disgusting.
Is it Ibram X. Kendi who says that that racism is everywhere? Don't ask how it is, but where it is in every situation. That's what this is. Looking for oppression everywhere. Even in the spelling in something as mundane as how we spell a word.
Yeah.
Can I share something else
Yes,
too?
please
And
do.
it's personal. I believe in being open. I'm in recovery too. And part of healing from recovery is to get out of your victimness and accept responsibility. To even when bad things have happened to us, we even have a part. We have a part in everything. And so this is the opposite of being healthy. So good mental health is to accept responsibility and accountability. And being a victim only is gonna lead down the road of self-destruction.
Yeah,
That's a personal share.
it's but it's true, and that is the thing, is that they want our kids to be constant victims. They're saying that this isn't necessarily a huge part of the class. However, educators should note that such conventions continue to grow and are common within ethnic studies communities. And this one kills me. Scholarship is based on wisdom and knowledge. And so people are just making up what scholarship is. A lot of times people will say, well, I'm an educator, and so I take my advice from other educators. But if you're all in the same, I'm just going to say it, cult, then you're going to, I know I went there, but I mean, if you're all in the same cult, then you're going to back each other up, regardless of whether or not there's any sanity on it. Some of these things I showed to my 15-year-old, and he reads and he laughs and he pretends he's smoking a joint because he's like, this is so ridiculous. And no, he doesn't use drugs. But
I need to just, whatever.
Like, yeah, man. And then, oh, I mean, that's kind of what it, yeah, beforehand, for anybody who's watching or watches later, I said, let's keep it professional. But, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you look at it and you're like, what the heck are you talking about? Why are they doing this?
Out of the mouth of babes, kids know. Kids know, just like my kids in my class said, this is inappropriate. Kids know.
Yeah. Okay, the next one. Brooke, why did you highlight the next, the orange above that? Oh, okay.
Just my comment yesterday that they're going to infuse it into every subject, but I think that Tammy made a good point of that, so I don't.
Okay, sure. I saw something. Can you go back up? I'm sorry.
Oops.
Maybe.
We already did that.
Yeah, go back up. It was, I just saw chapter 5 provides links to instructional resources to assist educators in facilitating conversations about race, racism, and bigotry. Okay, that's fine. We can keep on.
Yeah, we'll have to look at those resources.
Right? Oh, that'll be fun. Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Now we're on to this page right here.
It only took us 6 episodes to get past the intro. Okay. Now, this is the stuff that I found interesting and especially wanted Tammy to give comment on, because this is the part where it says how your district must commit and must be involved. What did you see with that, Tammy?
What do you mean, as far as my district being involved?
Right.
Well,
Or-
we haven't started ethnic studies yet.
Okay.
So it's
Go
a
ahead.
graduation requirement starting 2024, I think.
Same with us.
Yeah, now, Fresno Unified had a pilot program. And so they started it, but in my district, we did not start it yet.
You haven't started it yet. So you don't feel any pressure yet as a teacher that you need to comply with it?
Not yet.
Okay. That's good.
No.
Lynn, how about you? Did you feel anything?
No, just my own personal opinion, and we'll just go into something that's besides my personal opinion. But down where Brooke has, would you talk about why you underlined the historical field of study?
Oh, I just think it's totally bogus. I mean, I showed you where I looked up the roots of it and for UC Berkeley and San Francisco State University, and they never talked about the demands that they made or why the administration actually couldn't comply with those. So the historical connecting to local district and community needs, the historical field of study. Maybe I read that wrong, but to me, it seems the history of ethnic studies. Is that what they mean by that? And they're not even telling you what it is. And so they already had those classes there. So like, according to us, who's going to go through and research what you can barely find documentation? So, and then this district support, the reason I highlighted that is because it's not coming from the teachers. They're being pushed to do this. And they're saying, do it or lose your job. And
Right.
just this dictatorship of just like, it's coming down like this, and teachers are like, wait a second, no, I want my kids to be unified. I mean, they're just in this hard place unless they've already been indoctrinated.
I think it goes both up and down.
Yes.
So because we're seeing things like a teacher will pass out a paper and give and ask for genders, which they're not supposed to. That is part of our law. You're not supposed to ask for their genders in middle school. And when the parents ask a question about it, they say, oh, they just forgot. Well, are they forgetting in 3 different schools in the same district? Because that's the response every single time. And I think that's what it means by the support is critical, is that we will cover your butt.
Yeah.
And that is really concerning because we're seeing teachers in many different situations where they know that they can, those that are true believers, they know that they can push this stuff and nothing will happen to them. And I'm not sure where to go with that, because I want to praise my parents for standing up and getting it out or talking about it or going to the principal. But I don't know if the administration isn't lying to them. It is weird that it's multiple places doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, what I find interesting and I'm sorry to just butt in and interject,
No.
but what I find interesting is when I'm reading down here on 3rd bullet point, I have a couple things underlined, but going over this again, when it says, if you don't mind, will an ethnic studies professional learning community be formed to include teachers from multiple disciplines and academic backgrounds? What is the history of race relations in this community? And I get, what is your dynamics in a community? I get that, but I know where this is going. However, when you talk about incorporating a course such as ethnic studies, that is a powerful course that you would incorporate teachers who are not taught and disciplined in an area tells me that they are spoon feeding people that have not been professionally readied to teach a particular subject, that they are just regurgitating what they are being told. That's very concerning to me. And this is, like Brooke said, this is planning on going cross-curricular. So it's not just in one class, it's not in another, which goes to what we further said, in that you have teachers go into a classroom who are going to interject their opinions. There's no monitoring here. It's like the educator that was up in Alpine, who, had it not been for, being able to open the floodgate to actual video as to what she was teaching, saying, and her demeanor. I mean, these go on behind closed doors. That's very concerning, that whole bullet to me.
Well, there was this Spanish exercise recently in Utah, and the exercise was obviously muchacho, muchacha, girl or boy, and then there was one where una persona, and the adjectives matched because they matched the noun. And then the questions were, who's smart, who's going to be a lawyer, who's going to fail math, all of this different stuff underneath it. And maybe I would have taught it years ago, but because any assignment I have as a Spanish teacher, I turn it into a classroom discussion. And so I saw this as going to, okay, why did you think the boy was going to fail math? Why did you think the girl? Do you not want to be friends with a person whose sex isn't identified? Do you not like bisexual people? Or not bisexual, I forget what it's called, non-binary. And so I as a teacher would have avoided the classroom discussion around that, because teaching middle school, I believe that that's where this is going to lead. And I didn't want to have that in my classroom. So I thought that the assignment was problematic because of the ensuing classroom conversation. And how could I have managed that so that everybody did feel welcome and there weren't people giving their opinions on who they didn't want to be friends with and who was a bigot because they put down this as an answer. And so, like, taking into account our culture right now and the climate, and then having to take those conversations and especially in a foreign language, but take those conversations and make it a safe place, which is what all teachers want to do. Like in Utah, the music teacher quit because he didn't want to teach SEL. So he said, no, I don't feel comfortable teaching social emotional learning, and he quit being a music teacher. So it's not fair to the teachers either to give them these subjects that they have to monitor group conversations about topics that are very divisive, even among adults. So.
Right.
Can I say something too? I don't know about Utah, but the academic strength of people in California, kids, they can't read. In the local jail, Margaret Mims, our sheriff that just retired, the average reading level of people in the jail was 4th grade. The math on their iReady math and ELA for Fresno Unified, it was like 17% were proficient in math and 9% in reading. So what in the dickens are we doing? Why is this so big? And why aren't we teach? Of course, they're going to go, oh, well, let's have them read, about ethnic studies, but it's just like this. Teachers are retiring in droves, and they're throwing more on their plate.
Well,
Right.
can I just, I'm sorry, Carrie, which brings up another concern that I've had since the beginning of reading this, is that they keep stating studies show higher graduation, better intuitiveness, more academic success. And when you take away academics, you do not form successes. Success in what? So they have an agenda that they are trying to put forward, leaving critical academics out of the academic classes they belong in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And they're focusing and integrating an agenda.
Yep.
That's how I see it.
And that would be exactly what they say. Again, we come back to that double helix. We come down to that revolutionary energy that they want in our children. We come down to the only reason that children are going to learn is if they have representation. And that representation cannot just be somebody who looks like them, but it has to be somebody who's steering them down an ideological agenda. Always, in all curriculum. It is never this person has this viewpoint and this person has this viewpoint. No, they all have that same viewpoint. The same viewpoint of this is the way in which I've been oppressed. That is the viewpoint that education is turning into, because the goal is to turn our children into activists.
There's this Black lady named Monique Dewsome. She's a part of the Center for Biblical Unity. And I took the Zoom class of critical race theory with Monique Dewsome. And Monique was a believer in CRT. She was in almost 20 years. She had a friend that was white. And one day she had an awakening a few years ago. Her white friend was in tears because her white best friend said, "You think I'm racist?" And Monique was like, "Oh, those are just white tears." But she went home and God worked on her heart and changed her heart. And now she's like, no, critical race theory. So when I was taking the Zoom CRT class, Monique was talking about going to all these segregated places, Black graduations, critical race theory, Black this, Black group, Black. And Monique says, this will only end in violence.
Exactly.
This is bad. This is really, really bad.
This really does. You know, I want to, again, there's another good one, which is this final bullet point. But yes, this is going to end when people mistrust each other, then they begin to dislike each other. When they dislike each other, they begin to hate each other. When they hate each other, they begin to dehumanize one another. Mm-hmm. And when they dehumanize, they are okay with anything happening to in the name of, well, they're not a human anyways. They don't have matter, worth, or they're, as we heard before, inessential. And that's what we're going to teach our children, that some people are inessential. Now, this next one, I feel like, so I do want to hit on whatever they do that's good. So consider the local history, the demographics, the particular needs of your district, or cite students in their respective communities, including recognition of Indigenous peoples wherever course is being taught. So that might be land recognition. And my only issue with land recognition is when it comes down to saying someone else's prayers. I just think that crosses a line. So if you end up having to say things, especially things that you don't know what you're saying, chants or whatever, I think that becomes a problem that can take over. It's not just as simple a respect of you had the land first. And the other thing about land recognition is that it's really getting the kids in their mind to think about redistribution of wealth. We stole the land, and so then we need to give it back. And whether or not that's true isn't even the point. The point is that there isn't room for, when the kids are going in and they're little and they're saying, we recognize that this is on stolen land. These kids are learning in the same way that Mao and Stalin and Hitler taught the kids. Okay, we are just about time today.
Can I just talk about this one right here?
Yeah.
Research can be done by delving into reported student data. So the Department of Justice is in Davis School District, and they take the data and they will go after students who they say are doing racial things based on what it is. So when I fill out the cards for my kids, and I actually had my kids' DNA done, so I can actually justify this, I mark every box. Because they are there, you know, and I can back it up, but I don't like the collection of this data, especially because it seems like, at least how the Department of Justice is mandating Davis School District do it, that they're using it to justify the interventions that they're suggesting. And so, and maybe there is stuff out there and it is needed in some areas, but my fear is that this is data being collected to justify intervention. And so, you know, if you don't have to fill it out, I wouldn't, especially with all these boxes, and a lot of people are multiple, and like my kids. And so anyway, there's that. Just proves they're using it, right?
Right. And then we see this again, be grounded and well-versed in the purpose and impact of ethnic studies. Just remember, and I think this is where we should leave it unless anybody else has any thoughts, but just remember that there's a very clear purpose and a clear impact they want. It's not just getting your kids to appreciate what other people do.
And they want it in the whole fabric of the school. So right here, they want it, this is for social change. Ethnic studies is for social change the culture of each school as it goes. I mean, so, and then I wondered what this meant: non-discriminatory instruction and materials, just like you thought it was offensive, like black math instead of regular math. And so anyway, just a lot of things to look at, and how it reflects what they're actually doing in our culture. And you know, I agree with this, but I just wanted to say that what they're promoting is religious in nature because it goes against many religions. So once again, they're saying, don't do this, and they're doing the exact same thing. And, you know, calling what they're doing religious, people can argue that, but when it goes against religion and you're made to teach it a certain way, you know, then it is religious in use.
It's religious in use, but it's also religious in all of the concepts that you need to have a religion. They have holy books. Go ahead. Yes.
Well, what I'm seeing here too is instructions in all materials are appropriate for use with all races, religion, genders, sexual orient. Why is that in there? That's gender theory. Gender is a made up term. Like, I don't know when it was. I've been studying it like 30 years ago, and it was gender is a term that no, this is new stuff. This is gender theory.
Right.
We don't believe in theories, conspiracy theories, critical race theory, gender theory, but this is in here. Why is that in ethnic studies?
Right.
That's part of the religious thing, the element, you know, because it goes against religious.
Well, and
But
also, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, it just says down here, do not teach or promote religious doctrine, but there's gender theory here. They're
Right.
trying to bring in as religious doctrine.
Well, so the claim will be that it's scientific, but there's a difference between actual science and the science. The science has an agenda that you cannot question. Science in general is something that you question and prove. So they want that off of it. Do not reflect, promote was something that I was thinking. Yeah, it's a lot. Do not teach or promote religious doctrine. It is always a matter of projection. It is always, we will do what we tell you not to do. So when they say do not promote religious doctrine, I do want to hit that again. They have religious books. They have a God. They have a philosophy in which they follow, which is Marxism. Whether or not, once again, the teachers are aware of it. And there are lots of teachers that just go through the motions and do what they have to do because teaching is hard. And when you get home at the end of the day, you're exhausted. Having been there, that's a fact. Okay. So they go to a training and they say, this is our new best practice. Let's follow it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn or Tammy, but they say, this is the new best practice, so do it. And you go, oh, okay, because you trust that the people who look at teachers, you trust the people who work with teachers are just like teachers, empathetic.
It is crazy. We had 6 years ago at school, we had homework packets and they did spelling and ABC order and reading practice, and it was really good. And the ones that didn't have a home life, you know, I didn't punish anybody that didn't do it, but it was good for the ones that needed structure. And a assistant, a learning coordinator came in and said, studies show that homework doesn't help, and we're not doing it anymore. And all of a sudden, all the teachers went, what? And it stopped. No one did homework anymore, and it was over because studies showed.
Right.
Yeah.
And look at this. Furthermore, administrators should work to weave the purpose, the benefits, and the principles. What benefits and what principles have been proven? If you look at every single university who's embraced this, they're in worse condition than they were before. So what studies have been done? You're just supposed to wish it into existence.
Well, that's the thing. There's no accountability anymore. It seems to me it's kind of gone out the window.
Yeah.
Not even at the top is there accountability. Obviously, we see because things are being done within the schools that are down in written law that says they're verboten and they're still being practiced.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that the end of this one?
Yeah, that's page 25.
Okay. All right, my friends, I think that we will end this one for today and we'll read on and be back tomorrow if that works for you.
Yeah,
Sounds great.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.